If you go to a lot of companies' websites, sometimes you don't know what they do.
9 times out of 10, you don't know what they do, unless they're like, we sell plungers.
Yeah, you go anywhere and it is a digital-first, customer-centric, high-tech, value-based, and whatever, and you're like...
You said everything, but you didn't say anything.
And it's like you sell ice cube trays.
You and I go way back, working together. Me on the agency side, you on the corporate side. But I guess where did your career start in marketing?
I started on the agency side in a B2B, B2C agency as a young account coordinator. Back when we would fax media orders in and do everything.
Faxes, yeah.
Yeah, faxes made everything really urgent. And so I was in account service, from account coordinator through senior account executive. Went to another agency that was strictly B2B. And from there, actually went to work for one of my clients.
The classic tale.
Yeah, it was... I was miserable and my client's like, I kind of need somebody.
Yeah.
And I was like, I kind of want to get out of here. And so he called me in and I was at that company as a contractor for 1.5 years and full-time for 17 years. So I always think of myself as an agency guy at heart, but in the reality, that was 19 years ago.
Even though we were the agency that you hired to sort of help support, creating content and video, but you sort of operate like an agency person in the way that we interacted together, in the sense that you speak the language. You could even step in and do the work with some support if you needed to or wanted to. And so we kind of collaborated more like that than I think I have with other clients. So that totally tracks.
Yeah, and I feel that's a matter of understanding what you're trying to say, which I think a lot of corporate marketers have a problem with. Right. They understand what, and it's the difference between what you want to communicate and what you want to say. Yeah. It's like there's the strategy, but how do you get to the story under that strategy? And I think that's where you and I were able to collaborate really well, because we spoke that language of what does the video need to say, what does the content need to say, that the viewer will understand the main message.
Right. I'm always impressed with people that go from how do we tell a story in a way that actually connects with humans, to how do we navigate this complex organization and get stuff done through red tape, is a very unique skill set.
Yeah, it's kind of fun because...
But it's kind of fun.
It is.
It's not
fun.
Totally fun.
Because when you're in a corporate environment, especially highly regulated financial services like I was in, you also almost become the cool guy.
Right, yeah.
Because, they're like, we want to do this. And we're like, what the clients are telling us, and you can go into it and they get excited because that isn't their world. And so thank you for saying I have that skill, and I like being able to do that. But it's also, something that others appreciate when they don't have it.
Sure.
So when you have a salesperson or an executive who's like, I want to sell this, and you're able to come back and be like, okay, here's what we do. Here's the story we need to tell. Here is the whole continuum of how you do that. From what are we trying to sell to what does that feel like? Even in a B2B environment, there's a human being who's making a decision, and that human being might be an owner, that it's their company, it's their money, it's their reputation on the line. Or it could be like one of the influencers that it's more like, this is going to be in my review next year. This is, I got to impress my boss. How do I make that person feel like this is the right thing for them? How do I make them feel comfortable? And that's kind of the beauty of how you put a whole marketing plan together.
We were talking about where content fits in these high cost industries, these long sales cycles, the financial institutions. I'm on this agency side, and that's what we're talking about all day, so it could feel like that's 100% of what everything is, but you see it as a piece to a larger puzzle. Right?
Yeah.
Where does it fit into the puzzle?
I was thinking about this, and it's funny because I feel like companies sit in this middle spot. And I say that because we'll get to the storytelling part, which is where content fits in. But if you go to a lot of companies' websites, sometimes you don't know what they do.
9 times out of 10, you don't know what they do, unless they're like, we sell plungers.
Exactly, unless it's so
Like
obvious.
a specific widget, that's it.
But yeah, you go anywhere and it is a digital first, customer centric, high tech, value based, and whatever. And you're like,
You said everything, but you didn't say anything.
and it's like you sell ice cube trays,
Yeah,
which is my favorite example because there is someone out there who is really proud of their ice cube tray business.
Sure.
Like there is a CEO out there who's passionate about it. But so companies get so into themselves, they forget the one part, which is you just got to know what you do. Like people just need to know.
We need to start with what?
Yes, exactly. And part of that's Google. You need to make sure if someone's going, I need an ice cube tray, you pop up. But where content comes in, and early on, I created this content discipline. We had done branding campaigns, and the message was, if you have a vision, we can help make it happen. But it got to the point of how? Like, that's such a big promise. How do you make my vision happen? And so when we created this content mechanism, I had this pyramid. I called it my thought leadership pyramid. At the base was information. You need to give them, like you need to show them that you know what you're talking about. The middle was insights. So you need to tell them where you are unique. And then the top was inspiration. And so whatever your target audience is, but likely you really want a CEO or an owner or someone like that. What they listen to, one group that they listen to almost more than anyone else are other CEOs.
Yeah, imagine that.
So, they listen, to their officers and their agencies and their partners, but they really want to see what the other guy's doing.
Yeah.
And so that's where inspiration came in. And so what I had was, 3 parts. One is you've got to do all these things. And the inspiration's the hard one because that's not natural. But what you're trying to do, and I created these I think it's like 5 Ps, which is you're trying to prove performance prior to purchase. So when you're trying to get a prospect, you want to make them know, how does it feel when I'm your client? Like, what is that experience like when I'm your client? Because like we were talking about, if it's long sales cycle, if it's a high ticket item, if it's something that's kind of really hard to unplug, like a digital agency, a bank, whatever, I want to feel good about this decision. So how do I, as a company, make you feel like this? How that's done, and that's where content comes in. It's what are those conversations like? What kind of value am I getting for you if I'm spending $1 million a year or whatever on your service? What is that value like? So content comes in with, I'm going to give you that value. I'm going to show you that value so that hey, I'm going to get the service that we've defined and this.
The goal of sharing that value is to build trust, right? And you have to inspire them. They have to have the right information, right? They have to follow that pyramid. And I think content, especially video, because we're talking about like hearing and seeing a real other CEO and what are they like and like how do they see the world, and so telling that story, like that video sort of is meant to scale trust. You can't put the CEOs in the room every single day. So how do we do that next best thing? And it's like, well, I can watch the movie about them and learn about them that way, or get inspired by them. So that totally tracks. And it's interesting, I think, especially in that industry, like financial services and like corporate real estate, these sort of businesses that are like high touch, large, ticket items, like very expensive in some ways. So they're big investments, and so much of what you're selling is the people.
Yes.
That you're working with, not necessarily just like a specific product. It's like you said, it's like, do I want to work with this? What are they like? What do I want to work with them? And so I think that's a really complicated thing to solve. Like, how do you sort of inspire trust or inspire people in those types of businesses? Because it's different with the ice cube tray. Yeah. It's like, well, I need an ice cube tray.
Right. Did it make things cold? Cool.
It does? Okay, well, let me just pick it's a little more of a commodity in that way, but whereas what on the financial services and other industries like that, it's less of a commodity, and it's so much more. Yes, you have to have the right information. Yes, you have to solve my problem, but like I also want to be excited about working with you.
Right. And I think that where the stories and a lot of what we did come into play is like when you're talking to a CEO or owner, these people are visionaries. And they're creative in their own way. And something I would have to fight would be, you'd have the person who leads the construction group, you'd say, I have this video about a dairy farm, and they'd be like totally irrelevant.
This is so like you have different groups within the company.
Yeah.
They are, like in banking, there's like the agriculture group, there's the construction group, and they're selling to those individual industries.
Right. So, but on the corporate side, they think that's totally irrelevant.
Right.
But for a CEO, the message is, yeah, this is a dairy farm, but this owner had a similar issue that you had. They had an issue with talent management.
Right.
If you're in construction, you have that. If you're in banking, you have that. They had an issue with sustainability. They did a really cool thing to stay, sustainable, which you and I did a great video on. And so that's what you're communicating. You're not communicating this guy who has great ice cube trays, a great dairy farm. You're highlighting a leader who had a challenge that's usually a universal challenge that they help solve. And as a brand, what you are saying is, we work with smart people, we understand smart people, and we help them succeed.
Right.
And that's how you weave that story, and that's how you get that inspiration.
And we're talking about basically like a client story program here, right? Mm-hmm. Like you basically created this program across the business to tell those client stories because our future clients want to know how you're solving the problems for your current clients. Is that kind of a fair way to say? What does that look like? Kind of what was the content mix?
Yeah. So some of it was, you start with what is the scenario? What is the challenge? When I would do content, I would say, one example that I had is one of the sales leaders said, we want to sell cards, credit cards. And my challenge to him was, back me in to that.
Right.
And he kind of looked at me and I said, why did we develop that product? Oh, it does this, this, and this. Why do people need this, this, and this? Oh, because they need this and this. Why do they need this and this?
It's that classic ask why 5 times, and you're going to finally get to the actual real answer.
And we're like reverse engineering all of this.
Yeah.
And eventually, in this case, it got to, because they need to make decisions quickly so they can capitalize on opportunities, and they need all their data right in front of them to do that.
Yeah.
And I was like,
there's the answer.
That is the answer I was looking for. So you find the moment, the challenge, the scenario, and you say, okay, well, we're selling card. We need to have programs where we say the card, like we talked about. You need to
say what it is. Like, okay, well, what are you selling here? What's the offer?
And so it's, what is the product, and you need to talk about the benefits of the product in the right context. And so that's the media mix, and it's also the target audience.
Yeah.
And so, the stuff that you're selling could be, you're going to the person further down the chain. You're going to the person who every day is going to need to work with this thing. And then you go up to, you're working your way back to that reverse engineering that we just did. And so you have, your articles, your demonstrations, the things that highlight how the benefits help you and what the benefits can solve, which you would do. You would write things based on scenarios. And so the scenario in that case would be, how do you make quick decisions? And one of those tools happens to be this card that we're selling.
Right.
And then you go up to the video stories, which becomes, show me a person who was able to achieve something. They were able to acquire another company. And let's just stay for that example. Okay, show me an acquisition story, which is inspiring. Mm-hmm. And then you work your way down, and it's, how is this leader able to do that? Well, they saw an opportunity, but could they capitalize on it? Yes. Why could they capitalize on it? Because they had all the data that they needed to know that they had the money to do it. how did they have all this data needed? And now you've worked your way to part of it was a card.
Yeah.
And so the CEO, the CEO is never going to say, I had this card and I was able to do
I could solve the world's problem.
Right.
You're just flipping the order there, right?
Exactly.
You're getting in their heads, starting with their line of thinking and how they see the world, and then you're getting to that solution, not the other way around, which I think is, that's kind of the fundamental issue with a lot of salespeople, marketing people is like, okay, how do I start with me, which is I need to sell this thing. So I think what a great content strategy does is it thinks through those people in the moments in time, and it connects the right piece to the right moment. And I think one of the things that people do or don't do a lot of times is like, let's make one movie to do all of those things, right? I think an economy changes, that has a lot of effect on the types of conversations you're having, especially with marketing. How do you show up and prove out ROI, or how do you even have that conversation with an executive, for example?
It is the holy grail.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants ROI. Everyone wants to prove that if I gave you a ton of money, you're going to make me a ton of money. Part of it needs to be retention, which I don't think people think about. They're like, how?
Like loyalty, client retention, coming back, sticking.
Nobody's going anywhere.
It's the most expensive thing to do is to lose a current client.
Right. And so where content comes in there is you've given them all they need and you have not let a competitor come in the door. So that's where my little pyramid comes in. As long as you are giving them the information and the insights and you're making them feel inspired, no competitor can do that. So, with a bank, it's kind of easy to think about. Like every bank has an economist. So if you let some other economist come in and show me information I've never seen before, all of a sudden there's a foot in the door.
Right.
Where the content will come in, and when you've done it right, is nobody's going anywhere.
Right.
The clients are participating, they're engaged. You can also, one of the metrics is touch points. How many touch points have you had with these clients you've retained?
Through marketing, through the content, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all correlation though, right? Like, is there any real, like, are you ever showing up with like 75 million, whatevers?
Even that number is hard because no salesperson will say, marketing did this.
Of course not, yeah.
But I've been very fortunate to work with some great ones who've understood that correlation. In a high-touch, high-ticket industry, a salesperson, if they're ambitious, have 100 conversations a year.
Right.
Meaningful ones. What happens the other 265 days of the year when you haven't talked to this person? The marketing has come in and has kept that plate spinning that whole time. And where that's valuable is if you're talking to a client in January as a salesperson, and your next time to talk to them is July, but they have an acquisition opportunity in March. You haven't talked to them in 2 months, you're not even ready for it. Where marketing comes in is we're still top of mind, we're still adding value, we amplify the sales process. Salesperson, even if you're not there, the way marketing is behaving is exactly like you would.
Mani, I could talk about this forever. I do have one more question that is a little bit of a question I ask everybody. The question is, what is a word or a phrase that we should no longer use in the workplace? What comes to mind? And you can think about it.
There
I
are
have a lot.
100,000 of them, from circle back to there's the ones that we still use that nobody even understands the origination. The one, and it's for a totally different reason. The one that bothers me is when people say, they drank the Kool-Aid. If you're going to say something like that, know the origin. Drinking the Kool-Aid is a Jonestown massacre. People died because they drank the Kool-Aid. But you go to this corporate environment, and people are saying, "Yep, he's drinking the Kool-Aid," and it's like, okay, that's horrible.
How did that happen? How did that get commandeered into the corporate world?
I feel like the corporate world is so wimpy that we've created these aggressive ways to talk about things. We huddle up. We launch a campaign. We're hitting a target. What do you do after a campaign? You have a post-mortem.
Wow, yeah, that is very serious.
Yeah, it's like we had I think we need to say what we do.
Yeah.
Throwing this, it's almost like macho tough language into just be who you are. You don't have to use, all this aggressive language. But I would say if you're using drink the Kool-Aid, look up what it's about.
Yeah, that'll change. I mean, I didn't know that. And that
I only scratched the surface on what it was about, but go ahead.
Everybody look that up themselves.
Yeah.
Chat GPT that or Google it or whatever you do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's stop saying it then. Let's
Please.
not drink the Kool-Aid anymore.
No.
We'll just get excited about our thing.
We're going to be on board.
On board.
In agreement.
We'll agree. Okay, that sounds pretty easy. We can do that. Mani, this was awesome. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you again.
Elfangle.